name is Jeff Chambers, and you're listening to the Movie Rage Show.
It's time for the Movie Raid, and tonight's victim is composer Jeff Chambers that is currently doing the film project Crowbar. Hello.
How's it going today?
What we got going on so far? Are you currently just sticking with Crowbar at the moment, or do you have anything that you've actually recently released, or actually still in the works right now?
Yeah, so Crowbar is the biggest project most recently, and I finished up with it a little over a month ago, but there's kind of been some residual tasks related to that, here and there, putting together a trailer and whatnot. Other than that, since then, I'd have a couple other shorts that I've been working on, kind of all based out of Seattle, and then I have kind of been on and off involved with a feature-length film. Crowbar definitely was like a big focus of mine, for a number of months leading up to my contribution, and for the month of January, I definitely put in a good amount of time on it. Now that we're waiting to hear back from festivals and whatnot, there's actually not a lot of work to be done. We're just kind of playing the waiting game right now. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. For a variety of reasons, there's so many awesome and incredibly talented people who worked on it. It definitely made me want to put my absolute best foot forward. As far as length goes, it's about a 25, 28-minute film, and that actually was the longest film that I had scored so far. And so, yeah.
And it seems like when it comes to a point of interest, like in terms of other projects, it seems like composers or even actors, it seems like they put more of their effort into certain films that they really want to actually try out for, rather than just putting their best foot forward in general.
Yeah, I like to think whatever project I've been handed, I'm gonna try really hard, and I do, of course. I'm not the kind of guy who's gonna mail it in on a project if it doesn't interest me. With Crowbar, sent me the script for it the first time around. Back in July of 2018. I finished reading the script, and I emailed her right away and said, "Hey, I'm in. This is incredible. This is cool." It was one of those ones where as soon as you read it, you knew it was going to be special. You knew it was going to go places. It definitely, I was motivated from day one to do an excellent job on this. And then as it kind of unfolded, I started to see all the other incredibly talented people from the Seattle area who are going to be involved, and it made me want to do a great job that much more. The story in this film was so special and so unique, more so than any film I'd ever scored before. It made me really not want to get in the way of what was happening on the screen. So there's all this incredible acting happening, all this incredible cinematography. There's so much going on in it. It just made me go, wow, I am so blessed to be a part of this. How can I compose a score for this film that's going to complement what's happening, really, really not get in the way? I think it really heightened my awareness of what music can do for a film. And I gotta say, too, that's partly due to working with Lee, the director and writer, because she actually is really a big advocate for music in film. She has a very keen taste for what she likes and whatnot. So just working with her this story, and it's really changed the way I've looked at how can my music really bring a film to life, not get in the way, enhance what's happening on the screen.
Now, the kind of methods in terms of composition, do you prefer the all electronic? Do you prefer more instrumental, really basically straight to the roots type of deal?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm different from some folks people work with. I'm actually a classically trained dude. I went to school, studied classical music. That was my training, and it was very old school. One of my professors in college taught theory and stuff by hand. We wrote everything out by hand. So it was a very back to basics type of approach. And what that translates to now with my film score approach is, even though a lot of film score happens digitally, it happens on computers with virtual instruments and whatnot, I actually score everything the old-fashioned way first on in sheet music format. And the first few films I did, I didn't do it that way. I just kind of jumped straight into Logic, which is the program I use to compose and kind of record music. I just jumped right in, but I realized that with my classical training and the classical music that I write, that's my process. My process is to compose on a score, and so I thought, why would I do it any differently when I'm doing film music? Yeah, I'm different in that sense. Not everyone does it that way, but with Crowbar, everything I wrote before I even started recording it, messing with instruments and stuff, it was all composed in sheet music format, notated format, which is unique. And then, you're asking, do I like the electronic stuff? Do I like kind of the more orchestral sounds? I would say, given my classical training, I do like to use orchestral sounds, but I'm really have been pretty open-minded to lots of electronic sounds.
Now, working with different arrangements in a score in a film to match the story, do you think it's better to change control or even control the change in the flow of the concept?
It's an interesting question. I think that the relationship between the director and the composer is such a unique one, and it's very common for the director to ask the composer to do something differently. To be honest, so far with unreasonable for the composer to go to the the director or the writer or the editor or anyone and go, hey, what do you think about doing this? I think that's kind of an interesting concept, and I know that's not unheard of. I can't say I've gone there yet, but I think that's a pretty interesting idea.
The even flow of things, sometimes it may not fit. Sometimes you need a little bit extra like richness or different flow to it, because I mean it is a dramatic film, but they don't know how to be like so dramatic you have to make it dramatic.
Very true. Yeah, as composers, it's our job to bring what that first edit is. It's our job to bring it to life, but like you're saying, if it's a dramatic story, and if we see something we don't think works, the reality is composers are storytellers too. We just do it with melodies and notes and rhythms and stuff, and so we could have an opinion on that, and I think it would be very fair for that opinion to be heard.
Yeah, because it's almost like a story within a story, because you are also telling your side of a little bit of a similar story within the story, while you're telling this story matching up to the story that you're watching on screen.
Absolutely. And to me, story is such an important word and is such an important element to a film. Personally, I've noticed a lot of film scores in this day and age have kind of gone to more of almost like an ambient, like a texture-based kind of sound with ambient sounds and a lot of pads, a lot of stuff that's not going to get in the way. It's just going to kind of be there. What was really fun about Crowbar was that we did not shy away from using melodies and themes, and in fact, I'm really proud of the score to this film, because if you looked at it from a real nerdy standpoint, you could actually almost see the story within the soundtrack itself. So, like, the story is told that way. There's a theme for the main character, and when something bad happens to the main character, we hear that same theme, but now it's different and stuff. And there's a fine line. It's definitely possible to overdo it and to kind of whack your audience over the head with your use of themes, and sometimes I catch myself and have to scale back a little bit, but I'm a big fan of using themes and melodies and really telling that story, but like you said, in the context of music, it is. It's a story within a story, and at the end of the day, hopefully, the musical story lines up with the film story.
What are your thoughts on the fact that a lot of these films are more likely, well, even if it is dramatic, are also using just soundtracks from, band soundtracks, for example, from a band or earlier band? I mean, I understand that it caters to a certain scene, which is understandable, but I mean, like, if you were to go buy a CD, like the soundtrack to the movie, I personally want to get the orchestral version of it. If it fits the film, that's great. There's a lot of films that have excellent soundtracks to it, but what are your thoughts on the fact that a lot of films are just using band soundtracks and not actually using real composition to it?
So I'm a big advocate, writers and directors working with a composer. I just think it's such a unique way to add an extra dimension and a layer of sophistication to your film. And I'll speak to two things. The first would be what you're saying, as far as using existing bands, music, that kind of stuff. To be honest, for some films it works, and let's say it's a soundtrack of 12 songs from popular artists, or it may be like a classical piece. That's one thing. If it fits your film, I can live with that. It's not my favorite thing, but I can live with it. The thing that really gets me up in the morning is the number of films these days that are using either royalty-free music, which is just music that people have written and they put it on the internet and said, hey, you're free to use this, no royalties needed or whatever. Or even if they purchase, I call it canned music, but production library music from various websites or whatever, and they're basically just kind of taking this pre-written music and dropping it on top of their film. I myself am not a film writer, I'm not a director or anything. To me, that seems like a pretty big disservice to your film. You've done all this work to write this great script, you've shot this film, you've edited it, hired talent, you've paid people, you've done all this stuff, and then you get to the final step of the process in post-production, and to just take an existing track and drop it on top of your film and kind of hope it works, to me, just kind of seems a little bit like a Hail Mary, and I personally think it's a disservice to a lot of films. Like I said, sometimes it works, and that's cool if it does, but I'm a big advocate for go out, hire a composer, get to know that composer, work with them, let them interpret your story, and then have conversations about it, tell them what you think should happen musically, go back and forth. It's this whole extra layer to your film that I think so many directors and writers are missing out on, and it's the time we live in. Unfortunately, there's a lot of free music available out there. There's a lot of free written music that sounds great that you can buy and drop it on top of your film, and it sounds legit. But at the end of the day, I think you have to ask yourself, is this music, is this the perfect music to tell my story? And I have a hard time believing that buying something or using something pre-written can do that.
To me, it takes away from the artist of the composer, because you're not showcasing your own art of what you can do, like a sculpture. This is to me, it's almost like a paint by numbers, except with music.
Yeah, That's a good comparison. It is, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's your story, and, if that's how you want to represent it, I guess to each their own, but boy, I wouldn't want to drop something on there. That's just not how I want to do it. I circle back to Crowbar. This is a film that honestly made use of both worlds in all the right ways, in my opinion. We had 2 scenes and then credit music that we actually used local artist music, which was really cool. And it's like we've been talking about here, existing tracks. And, for example, one of the scenes took place in a bar, and we needed music that, sounded like it was here in a bar. And rather than having me compose a new track of music that was going to be, in the background, kind of creating this environment in the bar, we actually had some music from local artists that we were able to use. And it was cool because we got to use someone else's music and get that in there. And it just kind of added another layer. And that's something that maybe people don't realize they're allowed to do. You can use a couple tracks, band tracks like you're saying. You can use those in your film in addition to doing, underscore and whatnot for the rest of the film. You can do a combination of the two, and it can work really well.
Oh, it certainly can. It certainly can. Once you mix them up, I mean, you get a good combination. Boom, you got yourself a decent mix track there for the scene or for the tone of the movie itself, and that's really cool. But when you're working with projects, especially if you're local and you've been local for X amount of years, how does the business for you working within just this one state? I mean, does it work out with you with other states as in terms of getting your art out there?
Like, is most of my work exclusive to Seattle, or do I branch out? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Does it help you out in terms of branching out, or is it better for you locally?
Right, yeah. The obvious advantage to working locally is the ability to meet up with people in person. There's nothing like being in the same room as someone you're collaborating with. On this project, after I sent out the first draft of music, Lee came to my home studio and we worked on the soundtrack for like 14 hours one day. We just sat down in the same room and hashed it out, and you just can't beat that. There's nothing like being in the same room with people. However, I do work outside of the Seattle area for sure, and obviously a common one for really anyone in the film industry would be work in LA. I have noticed that a lot of the work in LA does tend to stay in LA a little bit. That's kind of been my experience so far, but obviously, it is possible. For me, establishing a name for myself in Seattle, which is, a decently, credible film community out here, to be able to establish a name for myself out here has carried weight in picking up projects in other cities, I've noticed. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah,
and like that, you get a lot of respect, you get a lot of work within the area. I mean, it doesn't matter, even if it's like low budget, even if you're not making a tremendous amount of money, I mean, you can still hold your own in local area if they recognize you enough to even invest in your work as well as the film that you're involved with.
As long as you have a local scene, that's the important part. Someone gave me the advice once. They said you can't go fishing if you're not at the lake, which was, I think, really good advice. So, I think anyone who's wanting to do work in the film industry, as long as the area you're in has some kind of a scene, and that scene is something that you're happy being around and happy trying to work your way up in, then yeah, absolutely. Get that local work, get out there and make those connections and stuff, and see what happens. For sure.
Yeah, many people just go straight for the LA, the Hollywood type scene. I mean, they go for the big automatically, but honestly, I think if you start out local and you start establishing your own base itself with your work, you can accomplish something much more different and probably even bigger than just Hollywood itself. And then if you go to Hollywood and stuff, and then here's your resume. This is what you've done over the last, let's say, 5 to 8 to 10 years. And boom, you get yourself a directorial feature itself.
I would rather make a bunch of mistakes in a smaller market than LA and then, end up going to LA after having ironed out a lot of those mistakes, as opposed to going straight to LA, making a bunch of mistakes and ruining my reputation right away. I think it's smart to build your resume, and I think LA is really cool, and I have a lot of friends that have gone down there and dove into that head first. But I also have known people who've gone there before they're ready, and that's like an unfortunate thing because you only have one reputation in it, and if you try to go to the biggest film market in the world before you're ready, that city has a way of chewing up and spitting people out.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how well we've got on technology and stuff in terms of marketing, in terms of all this. I mean, some of the old habits can still bite you, man. It doesn't matter how well adjusted you are.
I think even the seasoned veterans out there in the industry come up short on projects. It just happens. It's a crazy field that we all work in. People sometimes ask me, hey, how have you gotten to where you are right now? Like, what's that process been like? And to be honest, a lot of it has just been a ton of trial and error. Of course, I went to school and I studied and worked hard at learning the craft and everything. But at the end of the day, it's like taken on a lot of projects, and some of them have gone well, and some of them have gone very poorly. And I've taken my lumps, I've learned a lot. Learned about what not to do. I've worked with great people. I've worked with people that I probably won't work with again. All those various experiences and stuff really shape who you are and shape what your career is going to be. There's not a lot of ways to learn it other than to just get out there and do it and realize you're going to try and fail a little bit. If you're diligent and have thick skin, you can pick yourself back up and move on to the next project and stuff. This Crowbar film was a huge encouragement for me, just to have the honor of working with so many talented people and awesome folks, to see the end product, and just so proud and honored to be able to have my music in this film at the end of it. That was a really cool feeling, but seeing it for the first time at the very first screening we did, that was really cool.
Oh, definitely, man. Because when you've reached that point, I consider that as a big milestone. It may be a small one, but when you see your work that someone else is presenting, you've accomplished something. That's like probably step 1, maybe step 2, maybe step 5. But the bottom line is your art is getting out there. People are going to get out there. Now you just got to ship it out to the world, and then everybody will finally appreciate what you've been doing, not just hide it in just some, in your basement somewhere.
It's always a shame when there's with great works of art, whether it's film or music or art, whatever it is. It's a shame when it doesn't get to get out in the public eye. It's something. What we do should be shared with the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, go ahead and plug in anything that you would like to further promote. I mean, if you want to discuss a little bit more about Crowbar, any release dates and so forth.
Yeah, so I'll definitely give a shout out for Crowbar. We've had such awesome support from folks, chipping in financially to help get the film submitted to quite a few festivals all around the world. And actually, I'm looking here right now just to see what we've got so far, and it looks like so far it's already been accepted to 3 festivals. One in Austria, one in Albuquerque, and then the Flix Film Festival, and that's out in London. So that's been pretty cool so far. And it's I think it's kind of affirming for all of us who worked on it. Who put all those endless hours. You do this project, and we watch it back, and we see it, and we go, "Oh, is this any good?" Well, we think it's good, but the common eye think it's good. So it's encouraging to have people picking our film to be a part of their festival. It reassures us, like, okay, we have something here that's special, and it's good enough to get into these festivals. That's pretty cool. Check out the film. That has the website at crowbarthefilm.com, and you can check out the trailer. You can kind of read about kind of what the film's about. You can see who's in it as far as the cast and whatnot. And this has been a really special project. I'm really excited about it. I'm really honored to be a part of it. My congrats to Lee Ryan Costin for writing and directing this thing and getting it out there. She worked hard, and it's cool to see all this hard work from so many people pay off. And when I look at the crew and the cast of this film, I see so many names on there where, honestly, when you look at their work and you look at their resumes and their reels and stuff, I'm seeing a lot of people on here where I'm going, wow, in 10 years we're going to be reading about this person going and doing something cool. This film seemed to bring together some of the cream of the crop in the city of Seattle for this very special project, very special story. And I really do think that we're going to be reading about some of these folks 10 years from now doing great things, whether it's here or off somewhere else. It's been a really special project to be a part of.
And there you have it, everybody. That is composer Jeff Chambers.